Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is the Replenish 2020 Datapel presentation. We normally hold this in person in each state annually. However, this year we're doing it virtually to be COVID safe. And we really appreciate you taking the time to jump in and review our presentation and the subsequent presentations for the rest of the day. This is a recap or a rebroadcast because we did have a few technical issues before, but I'll be running through that now. One of the things that we do as part of our Replenish series every year is we look at the state of our industry. We take feedback from our customers. We look at some of the things that have been happening, and we try and just roll that up into a general review of the industry, the direction things are going, and the things that we think are most important to you as wholesalers. At the end of the day, your success is our success. So that's really what it's all about, sharing as much information about how successful customers are operating. So this presentation, while it's all about the way the industry is working, I'm really trying to explain to you the pieces that are required to build up the next generation warehouse. You know, how that's got to look, not only from a technology perspective, but we look at all the aspects and elements of the supply chain and how that all plays into a modern day warehouse. So let's just take a look at the current state of the Australian supply chain. So you can see that it's a large contributor to GDP, $68 billion a year, with SMEs, that's the small medium businesses, which is most of us, contributing $40 billion, okay? 3PLs, 3PWs and manufacturing, also industries that we work in, contributing large amounts to the GDP of Australia. Okay, obviously this year we've seen a growth with logistics and transport, and obviously towards the end of the year, which we're at now as we enter it, we do expect to see that jumping up. Obviously with the COVID restrictions, a lot more online shopping and deliveries being done, so a lot more e-tail going on. Okay, so if you had been to some of our previous Replenish conferences in various states, you will have heard me talk about the online apocalypse. Now, this is something that's thrown around a lot. People sort of doomsaying, saying that it's it's really having a massively negative impact, on wholesale. It's dooming retail. Yes, there are noticeable changes in the marketplace. Is it because of online trading? No, that is not what's driving these businesses to basically have to shut down. It's Deloitte's have done investigation, but I think when you start to pare away at things, you start to see that the spending habits are actually changing of our customers. Okay, and that's the big takeaway from this, is that customers are kind of diverging. We're seeing customers willing to spend more on a premium brand or a premium experience, or they're going the other way and saying, all I want is low cost, and that's what I want. No frills, low cost. I want the basic service or the basic product I can get for the least cost. Okay, and we're seeing that happening across a range of industries, not just the commodity product market. Okay, further to the whole, putting things in perspective, in terms of where online is, you'll see that the leading industries for online sales are the fashion industry, technology, and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff, giftware, building supplies and things like that. But generally, toys, we're seeing a lot of those industries, but they're down the chain. Fashion and technology are leading, and look, you can see that right now we're trending at around 8% of the of the market, of the retail market, okay, is basically online sales. So that's still a very small percentage. But there is something in that needs to basically be taken into account for wholesalers, okay? There is a real impact here. So let's put aside the fact that chain stores and those things, and you're seeing bricks and mortars outlets closing. There's an impact, obviously, of those closures on wholesalers, but I think there's a bigger impact that we need to worry about. What we've seen is, since 2003, the wholesale distribution GDP contribution has been in decline. Okay, so what does that mean? That means the amount of money that is really being added to the economy from the wholesale distribution side of industry is actually reducing. There are reasons for that. I mean, things are getting more expensive. It's less efficient in that work in that space. The main area is because of B2C. Okay, so one of the things that SME Wholesale is seeing is that the rise of the e-tailer. So we're looking at things like Deals Direct, Amazon, Groupon, eBay. They're a new class of retailer. They're not classed as wholesalers. Okay, so what you are seeing is the market that used to go through the channel is now going through an e-tail channel. Now, this is great for logistics because they've got a lot more smaller orders to deal with. Not so great for our wholesale industry. Okay, so in real terms, the market is shrinking for wholesalers. Okay, what this means is that wholesalers really need to figure out how they get to be part of that B2C action. Okay, how can you partner with your channel or an e-tailer to become a drop shipper, or how do you get keep yourself relevant in that marketplace? One of the things that I was going to mention on the previous slide was you really do need to start to look at your product mix and start to say, well, where is my product mix? Am I the low cost? Am I the premium brand? Am I somewhere in between? Should I be somewhere in between? I think, that's obviously an answer only you can sort of unravel for yourself. On the e-tailers, that decline, when you look at it in real terms, in terms of money, is around $7 billion year on year that we're seeing changing in that market. And it is going to e-tailers, but not just local e-tailers as well. It's going to overseas. So, for instance, you've got the global competition now with global online stores opening up. The barriers to entry into the Australian market are relatively low for e-tailers overseas. Okay, so that's also going to cause issues, and it's eroding the market for local wholesalers. Okay, overlay on that, the increasing costs of labour and operational expenses. Okay, it is Australia's not necessarily the cheapest place to operate a warehouse. Okay, so what does it mean when I talk about an e-commerce pivot? That means that warehouses are seeing a change in the way their orders are coming through. More orders, smaller orders. Okay, they're also seeing the way that they work with the channel, the distribution channel is changing as well. So drop shipping, being now a new sort of not necessarily a new thing, but featuring more heavily in the way that they operate. Returns management, again, something that has to be dealt with. May not have been an issue for people before in this market, but becoming more and more of an issue as we go forward. Okay, let's talk about innovation and investment. When we look at the statistics provided to us, there are definitely winners and losers in terms of the way businesses are developing. Okay, and as I said at the outset, your success is ultimately our success. Okay, and the market is definitely growing more competitive. One of the things you need to understand is that 99% of customers are operating on the internet, or businesses are operating on the internet as well. Okay. And a couple of surprising things that we've learned is that, in our space, there's still over 60% don't have any online ability to take orders. And that really doesn't match up with where customers are at right now. Okay. So, that's something that really no one in our industry should be operating without the ability to provide online order taking. So let's just look at where spending is happening. If you look at, by and large, those who don't spend on or invest in their company are pretty much falling behind in terms of productivity, sales gains, and profitability gains. In general, expenditure in any aspect of business, like upskilling employees, IT systems, productivity systems, they're seeing somewhere between a 10% and 20% increase in their revenues. Okay. Now, given what I've just said about how the market is being pressured and shrinking, you really don't want to be part of the team that's not investing in their business. The other thing is that, a lot of wholesalers don't necessarily see themselves generally as a brand. But that needs to really change. I think the way that wholesalers see themselves as a business, they need to see themselves clearly as a brand that represents something to their customers. Okay. And that would involve, the investment in digital marketing, obviously business to business systems, as I just mentioned before. Okay. So let's just look quickly at some of the other issues not directly involved with, the IT or the operations of a business, but let's look at just, what are some of the challenges of the industry that you really do need to think about? Well, there is a labor shortage. And let's face it, not many people are coming out of school or universities or anything like that, with thinking my career, I'm looking for a career in warehousing, right? I'm looking for a career in manufacturing. That's probably not high realistically on the list of things that people want to do. Now, why is that? It's because, let's look at, the business operations and how they run. They're running in a fairly traditional manner. They're not engaged, as an industry, we've not been engaging technology as much as what we should have, which means that we've got a bit of an issue connecting with the current millennium Generation Z workforce. Okay. So the fact of the matter is we've got a workforce that's probably at the wrong end of the spectrum in terms of their openness to technology and their willingness to basically learn a lot of new stuff and go and make change within the business. Okay. So, the average age of the business owners in the wholesale industry is, on the higher 45 to 50 plus. Okay. These are not really Gen Zs, they're certainly not millennials, so there's a different approach to the way technology is used. Okay. So we talk about the digital natives and things like that, and how do we basically fold them in? Well, that's something that is a real challenge that needs to be dealt with. I guess the last thing, like I was saying about that modernization and engagement, we do need to recognize that we have to pivot towards a more digital future, because that's where the growing action is. We need to recognize the demographics of our customers and our suppliers. We're not, our customers, the ones that we used to work with, they're leaving the marketplace. It's the new economy, that new digital economy, that we need to really engage. Okay. And that's where we need to put some focus, and that is going to be a challenge. Okay, moving on. At this point, though, I do want to just basically recognize that we are working across some time zones, and it is Remembrance Day today. So while we are doing a rebroadcast now, we do just want to, pay tribute to those who, sacrificed so much to allow us to have the lifestyle that we have now. So on this day, lest we forget. Let's move on to talking about the requirements to pivot the business. So how do we address those challenges? Okay, how are we going to address those challenges? So number one, as I said, innovation. We look back on what I was talking about before, those winners and losers, and what does it take to really build a resilient next generation warehouse in today's turbulent economic conditions, which they are. So the three key things that we think you need to take away from this presentation is, a willingness to invest in innovation, invest in key staff, and look toward, the assessment of your operations and automation of those operations. Okay, so those are the three things that I want you to kind of walk away with today. Let me drill in a bit more. Innovation and investing in innovation. Well, one of the big complaints, if you like, that we have, or that people basically highlight to us as a barrier to them actually investing in innovation, is cash flow, obviously cash flow, and the money to put into these things. So our response to that is, well, if you look at the model that's being presented by most vendors, suppliers these days, it is a service-based, ongoing OPEX type sort of model. So we're not seeing big CapEx. Obviously, if you're, constructing a new warehouse, something like that, that's a little bit different. But generally, the projects and the innovations that we're talking about really are an OPEX type sort of investment. And that's something that I think we can talk a little bit more about. But so I guess as a way of freeing up, if you've got capital expenditure, try and see where that can be switched across to an operation, to an OPEX. Again, with innovation, look towards the new generation of workers, the digital natives, if you like, and get them to participate more in the business. And by doing that, you will build more loyalty from them to your business, and they'll have a bigger stake in the outcomes. Look, building a core team is of absolute importance. You don't need to have a large team, but you do need to have a strong core team. I remember back to when I was a young engineer or whatever, one of my bosses said to me the most important thing for him was to build his core team of astronauts. He needed 3 or 4 astronauts in the business that could pretty much do everything. They could be, they could be physically fit. They could basically mentally fit. They'd be explorers. They'd be able to do everything. And he said, with a core team of astronauts, I can pretty much do whatever I need to do. And I think he was onto something with that. It's very important to basically go out and find your astronauts. But make sure you do broadly incentivize your staff and create an engaging environment. People want to come to a workplace, or they want to be part of a team that are definitely engaged and they feel that they're actually making a difference in. And I mean, these things are outside of the general, of what we traditionally do, but we do see these things as critically important to keeping our industry, growing. And like I said, your success is our success, and we want to basically make sure that you are these things are top of mind for you, so that you can be successful. Obviously, one of the most important things in terms of business management is to be able to measure and control and then deliver change into the business. Okay, decision support, I guess, is the way to say that. What we're seeing is that in the environment that we're currently in, there's no room for overhead and administration costs. We really need to pull that back. And the way that can be addressed is through automation. Okay, so let me talk about each one of these points in a little more detail. So on the innovation and barriers to innovation, which was what we talked about before. So, obviously, like I said, switch to Switch from CapEx thinking to OpEx thinking where possible, rather than have something where you're going to go, it's going to be a one-off big project. We're going to get a lot of money, spend a lot of money on it. Let's see how we can change that to more of a cash flow model. Talk to the suppliers. You'll find that a lot of suppliers now are offering purchase finance, or they will just amortize the cost of whatever it is, any upfront costs across a period of time or into whatever the subscription might be. The other thing about innovation is not so much about paying for the innovation, but how do you basically have the skills to actually, one, create innovation, two, to support it and its delivery into the business. We don't have an expectation that you have all the innovators and the necessary skills within the business. You really should consider outsourcing projects with, like we do. We work with people in the industry who we know are experts in their field. So we're trying to build a best of breed supply chain, which means that we need to pull on people who are working in those various aspects of the supply chain where they're the experts, right? We're not the experts in every aspect of the supply chain. We know warehousing, we know how to engage our data, and we know how to provide access to our data. We know how to connect to the right systems that will produce a good, efficient end-to-end supply chain. But we don't do each of those pieces with any depth in some respects, but we do the core warehousing. So what I'm saying is take that same approach, but outsource your projects, work with experts to get the information and expertise that you need in-house, and then manage it from there. Okay. It's always important to have very clear outcomes and milestones around any projects you put down. You don't want things to meander. That becomes a waste of money and time. And try and link success to a reward for the people who actually are behind the innovations. That's really important as well, because that way it'll help to set a culture of innovation, because people see that making a change is rewarded, and there's positive feedback in that respect. So, talking about culture, like I'm saying, try and build that innovation as a culture. Okay. At the same time, like I said, make sure that like any business, you're going to have people who are always got ideas. That's great. We love ideas, but we also like results. So we need to set a bar that says that, well, that's a great idea, but if it's not going to deliver us at least this benefit, then we're going to have to park that one and go with another one. That's great. We can do that. But you do need to give your staff and your team some space to actually come up with ideas or talk them through. So you can't really have an innovation of culture without giving people the space to get those ideas out and discuss them. Now, I'm not about to tell you how to do that, but I'm just telling you that is something that you need to consider. Once an idea is basically agreed upon, or a project is agreed upon, and we've seen this with people in industry, even introducing WMS, which for some people is a radical change to their business. Without having people in the business take ownership and then have supporters who really want to see the idea succeed. If you don't have those two elements, you could be doomed to failure, regardless of how good the idea is, how great the innovation is going to be for the business. If people are kind of shut down from it and they're not interested, it's not going to happen. So again, make sure you've got champions to drive the change. Make sure you've got supporters who want to see benefit and see the reward from the change. Okay. As part of this, you always need to focus on giving people the space again, or invest in the upskilling of them. There's no point putting in innovative change if no one actually understands how it works or how to operate something new. Again, you've got to do the whole package, in terms of involving the staff and then empowering the staff at the same time. So let's talk a little bit more about the whole digital native thing, because, I certainly understand coming from a tech background, but obviously, I didn't grow up with a mobile phone in my hand. And I see a stark difference in the way that the digital natives kind of interact and connect versus the way that, I guess different, or each of the generations interact. And I can see quite clearly the differences there. You need to encourage device use as integral, but not in a non-productive way, obviously. It's funny for us when we walk into a business and see a pin-up board when everyone's on their phone using Facebook, right? So right away we see there's a disconnect between the culture of the business and the people that we're trying to engage with. So the point is, how do we harness device usage in a productive way? Okay. And certainly with the digital native side of things, you can utilize devices, and there's this whole concept of gamifying the workplace. Okay. Now, what does that mean? It just means that giving information through the device that they're familiar with that basically helps to incentivize them. And there's some things that we're working on to actually help with this. And that will be definitely part of the roadmap discussion that we'll be having. But also training and upskilling these guys to actually utilize productivity apps on their devices that actually help the business is also another way of actually making the relationship work. I know of cases where there's some organizations that have warehouses where there's hard and fast rule to not allow devices now, and by the same token, I've seen them say they have trouble because people, once they find out that they can't use their devices, they don't want to work there anymore. Okay. So that's a problem, given it's a scarce environment for scarce labor market. You really don't want people turning up and then just leaving because they don't like the rules, right? So these are not things that are necessarily things that we can do directly, but we're trying to provide you some tools and some features and functions in our system that address some of these areas so that you can engage with your workers. All right. I guess the last major point that I want to talk about, obviously, is the COVID-19, pandemic. And, this has obviously not been a great thing for the world, but it has been a massive catalyst for innovation and change. And speaking to a lot of people and the way they've changed things that are working with their business, a lot of them are saying, why didn't we try this before? Why didn't we do this before? Why didn't we make that change before? Because it makes sense and it works. So in some respects, the pandemic has really accelerated the whole investment in innovation through necessity, of course. You know what I mean? So social distancing, and, the isolation of workers, having to go remote is definitely something that spurred innovation. But, in some respects, things have got better. In some respects, things have got a little worse. But it has, I guess, enlightened us that, we don't need to have one event to start innovating. We really should be innovating all the time. And I think that's one of the things that's really brought it home to us as a business. And also we see it in our customers who are, going, wow, we're doing some great things. We could have been doing this before. But the reality is COVID has highlighted the fact that the supply chain and our industry is vulnerable, okay? So how do we build a more resilient business? What are the things that we need to be aware of? What are the things we have to do? Well, fundamentally, we need to start to understand our demand and look at our forecasting, okay? Because clearly demand can potentially change, and forecasting, behind forecasting, there's a lot of assumptions in terms of how quickly you can get things, where things are going to head. And of course, who would have thought that, all of a sudden the demand for, small diesel generators and freezers was going to go through the roof, or exercise bikes, right? Things like that. So, okay, demand is hard to pick sometimes, but we do need to be more aware of what if, okay? Which brings me to the next point, which is multiple sources for supply. So having a single supply has clearly, not paid off if that supplier all of a sudden gets locked down, right? So we need to consider multiple suppliers for products. Okay, so secondary suppliers, tertiary suppliers, so forth. Going forward, let's assume that COVID kind of gets under control. We still have the backdrop of more erratic weather patterns and things like that we need to consider as well. So we should consider that as part of our supply chain resilience. Again, back to what I was talking about before about the changing habits of consumers, when we're looking at the low cost versus premium products. Is it time to do some is now the time to do product rationalization? It might be, while the channel is open to looking at different options. Right now is probably a good time to rationalize your product mix. On top of all of that, of course, we want to promote a worker safe environment, and it is important. There are reviews of the physical operating procedures within a warehouse. Some of the things that we need to consider is the amount of material handling. How do we make our workers, or how do we encourage them to be compliant with the social distancing rules, and cleanliness and hand washing and all those sorts of things, wearing the PPE, masks, so forth. Those things, should they be policy or should it be a recommendation? How does that risk play into the business? Because obviously no one wants to be the next epicenter of a COVID breakout, right? So these things have to be looked at quite seriously. So specifically, again, just following on from what COVID is basically doing, what are those specific challenges that we've been seeing coming back to us, and what are some of the things that we've been seeing in the market that could impact this, our wholesale distribution customers? Well, remote working is a big one, obviously. And one of the things we're seeing is some warehouses have struggled because they're on, fairly old traditional sorts of systems. The phone systems might not be VoIP systems. So those things need to be looked at. Email versus instant messaging, you know what I mean? Like meetings, online meetings versus, physical meetings, things like that. These forms of communication need to be modernized. And just working remotely, how do you, when you do have people working remotely, mainly admin, of course, obviously physical pickers have to work in the office, but still, how do they keep connected with the team in general? How do you keep connected with your team? So, things like Zoom and so forth, and these more regular meetings to sort of bring the team together are really important aspects of the challenge that COVID-19 has sort of thrown at us. I think for the warehouse operations, of course, it's a physical job that requires the physical, handling of materials and the movement of materials, and therefore social distancing, physical contact, handling. These things are important to be managed, and there is talk of compliance and accountability around for owners actually around social distancing. Now, you can't be everywhere in the warehouse at once. So we're obviously looking at ways of providing features and functionality that supports you as an owner to take compliance and create accountability amongst your workers and your team. Okay. So after all that background and looking at what we see as influences and so forth, what does the next generation warehouse need to look like in order to be part of the winners, and not the unfortunately the percentage of businesses that fall by the wayside because they haven't stepped up? In looking at some of the figures, the reality is that I think in sort of 8 years, there's literally out of 10 maybe 2 businesses or 3 businesses left standing. Okay. Now, our customers usually are with us, for a long period of time. We're talking in excess of 5 years. Okay. So we know that the businesses that we work with who invest in the sorts of technology that we're supporting are there for the long haul, and they're basically taking the right steps. We certainly want everyone to be on that trajectory, and that's why we take the time to do this, because we really feel it's important to understand where the industry is heading and look at what's happening in the industry and make sure that we're all working together to, again, get a successful outcome. So let's talk about what we've seen. Agility and accessibility. So that's really the key going forward. So the cloud shift thing has happened. Large business, something like 95% of the large business end of town is already hybrid cloud or fully cloud. So it's not a matter of should we do this, is it a good idea? It's a when and how. And once you get there, it's a whole new journey. It's like removing the ceiling on where you're at now, and it's going to open up a lot more opportunities that you probably can't see from where you're at now if you're locked into the on-premise thought process. Okay. A business needs to no longer think about being geographically anchored, and that's important. And that's what I think the cloud shift can assist with. The ability to access your systems from anywhere and from, pretty much any sort of device. So from an operational perspective, of course, you still need to support an infrastructure. You still need internet. You still need to have an understanding of how your technology is going to bridge from whether it be in the cloud to your on-premise peripherals and things like that. But you need to ask the question, are these things just there because they've always been there? Again, we need to innovate. Are these things really important? Do we need paper on this in this case? Does it actually serve a purpose, or is it just, are we doing this because we've always done it? In terms of operations, further to that is obviously creating a safe environment where you've got compliant and enforceable workflows. That's important because obviously, like I said, we want to make sure that our workers are happy to come and do their job, feeling like they're being looked after and that they're not putting themselves at risk. And they need to then not only feel that way, but they need to feel connected to a team that might be working remotely. So how do we basically create a connected and informed team? Well, we can do that by just basically making sure that we engage them through the technology that they're used to. Those digital natives will be using their phones, so phone apps, internet, and so forth, and using maybe some of the social media side to actually connect the business and the worker together. Lastly, how do we become a lean business where we're basically throwing away that unnecessary admin? And that's where we need to look at the automation side and, connect our systems or utilize the events and the data that's coming out of the systems to actually share the information across various business units or our team members. Okay. Really, any busy work that people are doing that's not helping is administration, and we should be looking to get rid of it. And the more that we automate things, the more transparent things become as well. We can see things happening and we can use that information to really understand, what's going on in the business. So those are the challenges, I think, for a next generation warehouse. And those are the things that you really need to be thinking about to create a resilient warehouse. What are we doing? Well, obviously, to sort of, if you like, overlay where we're going. So we've obviously transitioned ourselves, 12 months ago. We weren't a cloud-based, or longer than 12 months ago, maybe. We weren't a cloud-based system, but now we're providing that service to our customers, and we've had great take up. And obviously, it's an ongoing process, but it's working so well for those people who have actually taken that step, and we really believe that's the way forward. So that addresses the agility and the accessibility side of things. The operational side, one of the features that we're introducing for keeping workers safe and informed about what's going on around them is the Datapel Happy Space feature, which basically I'll talk a little bit more about in the next session. We already have zone picking where you can actually zone up the warehouse. So if you're using the PDA devices and things like that, can actually segregate picking routes and things like that, so you can minimize crossover. The last area that I want to talk about, which is new for all our cloud-based customers, is our integration of our application of the WMS and the Cloud API with other applications that you're probably familiar with, okay? So on the web with a product called Zapier. That allows us to basically take the information from WMS and share it with other applications that you're probably using, productivity applications using on the internet, okay? So this is called workflow automation, and it's something that I'll be talking in more detail about. And this is all towards trying to remove admin from the business and make the whole business a lot leaner, and allowing you to custom build workflows that basically, allow you to be different than everyone else, okay? So that's where we're at. Obviously, we'll drill down to a lot more of this in the feature section on the roadmap. But right now, I just want to talk to you about, I want to share customer stories with Elk. Now, obviously, Elk have been working with us for a very long time, and we've kind of helped them from their journey, and they've certainly recognized a transition from traditional wholesale through channel to broadening out their business with B2C, and they've seen an enormous success doing that. And we've had a great relationship with those guys, helping them to transform and pivot with e-commerce, helping them to connect their systems the way they need to remain efficient and continue to be competitive in their marketplace. And to their credit, they were also recently they were awarded the Medium Business Telstra Award as well. So now I do have a video. There seem to be some issues with Zoom playing the video, so please, hopefully it comes through okay. It might stall out, but you should be able to hear the audio through, and I think that'll help with that. So let's just have a quick watch.
Us. With us, Ruba.
Yeah.
So in February this year, we moved into this new space next to our bulk warehouse. And one thing that we did was go straight to Datapel to ask them about how can we think differently and think more efficiently about the way we use this space. We've introduced some new styles of racking. Datapel are helping us with our locations, and we still have a long way to go. So one of the things that was really exciting for us is that we've got such a long relationship with Datapel, and they've come along their journey with us. We've started such a heavily wholesale business, and now, like most businesses, we're really starting to grow our online business, as you can see behind me. And so Datapel helped us with that transition between the different ways that we process a bulk wholesale order to those dispatches that you're putting out on a minute-by-minute basis through our online part of our business. So one thing we've found with the rapid growth of the B2C business is, of course, the returns. So we can dispatch those goods out, but commonly our customers might want to come back and just swap out a size. So we have to make sure that our returns process is just as smooth as the process to dispatch the goods in the first place. Working closely with Datapel, we've been able to make sure that customer can access directly into our returns portal. It can go straight back into our WMS system, and all our team need to do is literally transfer those goods back into stock. This has made this sometimes very arduous process quite simple, and really supports the idea of getting that stock back ready for sale again. So the way we've been able to allocate our space really allows us to clearly define those spaces where we're picking, we're packing, and we're dispatching. In our bulk warehouse, we have them more separated, but here in our new space, we were able to facilitate that so quickly now, from the pick face to the pack and wrap, through our dispatch line, and we've always got plenty of room to dispatching out this door. We also have the flexibility, if we want to bring more dispatch benches in or more pick faces in, depending on the speed of the orders that we're punching out for that particular day. So where we're heading from here is to really start to integrate some of the pieces that Datapel do so well. One of those is the handheld devices. We want to be able to use those for everything from receiving our goods, transferring goods in, pick, pack, dispatch, really start to take out and automate some of those roles that have been so time-consuming for us in the past. I know that Datapel have a lot of experience in this space, and we're really excited to start to get them involved in this next step in our journey.
Okay, well, hopefully that didn't come through too badly, but we appreciate your taking the time to join us for this, Replenish online session. I'm hoping that we've been able to sort of, give you a slightly different perspective on how the industry is going, how it's evolving, the challenges that are, really facing the industry right now, how we're responding to it, and hopefully how we can help you with our products and services to actually meet the challenges and, grow your business and have a successful operation. So look forward to talking to you in the next sessions. So I'll sign off there. Let me just stop my meeting, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.